All right, another edition of the Wrap Up Show with John Schaefer and Jim Russell. Again, if you haven't subscribed, hit the subscribe button. If you haven't liked our content, give us the thumbs up. We're here for you throughout the end of this regular season into the off season. So much to get into. This is the source for exclusive year-round Padres content. If that's what you're looking for, make sure to hit that subscribe button at John Schaefer, at Jim Russell SD as well on Twitter. And Jim, you look at what has transpired here a week to go, and we get some really interesting, an interesting look into what's going on behind the scenes. And the question really today is, do you trust AJ Preller to make the right moves going forward? And we're going to hear from Britt Garoli, who was on a podcast with The Athletic coming up here momentarily. But that's the question here today, Jim. Do you trust AJ Preller to make the right moves moving forward?
At this point in time, it's hard to fully trust him because of what has happened. Like, the whole rock star GM and trading for a bunch of all-stars, and that's great, but you gotta hit. You gotta come through with those moves. And it just seems like every move that he has made, or not every move, but a majority of the moves that AJ Preller has made has backfired on him and this organization. There's been, yes, I will give him absolutely full credit for the moves that has worked out. But there's not been enough of those. There's not been enough of those moves to outweigh the moves that have not worked out. The trades that have seemingly blown up in his face, the trades where you get players back and they end up being injury prone, yet the players you traded away are all thriving with their new organization. And you could blame that on the developmental department with the Padres, but who hires that department? Who puts those pieces in place to help develop the talent that you drafted or acquired? It's AJ Preller. And it's just not worked out so far. And you're staring down the barrel of another season under 500. That's unacceptable, especially with the team that you assembled this year. And yes, there's injuries. I know, I get it. But that's not a good enough excuse. You can't just keep throwing out that this team is injured all the time, and before you start saying, well, why are they getting injured all the time? This is not just a bad luck thing. This is not just coincidence, because this is happening way too much. And this all falls on the shoulders of AJ Preller, in my opinion.
Well, I can't put all of the injuries on Preller. I mean, obviously, at some point, you're going to have to acquire some pitching talent that spent some time on the field as well. I can't put all of the injuries on Preller, but here's the other question. If Preller is the one that is in charge of everything and ultimately oversees every decision on field and otherwise, then will changing the manager have any significant change for this organization or not? Because if AJ Preller is the one that's hiring the coaching staff, if AJ Preller has his hand in every piece of business, and if he's under contract through 2026 and he's going to be here at least through 2022, if you replace Jace Tingler with whomever, is that going to result in different results or not?
I mean, maybe. But again, do you trust AJ Preller to make the right hire? He's 0 for 2. Pretty much he's 0 for 3. Pat Murphy's okay, that was in season, but struck out on Andy Green and struck out on Jace Tingler. Do you trust him to make another hire? Third time that you get 3 strikes, you're out. And a lot of times it's in baseball, if it goes so bad continuously over a 7-year period, how can you keep doing the same thing over and over again? So I'm very cautious with whatever moves AJ Preller makes from here on out for however long he's the general manager. I was super excited, as were you, about all the moves he made in the offseason, all the trades that he made last year. In 2015, trading for all of those pieces. I was excited, but not a lot of them have worked out. So for me, I'm definitely an arm's length away as far as my trust goes with AJ Preller and the moves he makes going forward with this franchise.
Let's hear from Britt Garoli. We have the sound from The Athletic, this podcast that she was on. She's covered Manny Machado for over a decade. She's a national baseball writer. She had this to say about the Padres dynamic that really starts and ends with AJ Preller.
Everybody in that organization is a AJ Preller hire. Jace Tingler did not pick his coaching staff. That entire coaching staff was recruited and signed and brought in by AJ Preller. So this is not a traditionally run organization. You look at Detroit, AJ Hinch got to choose his, he got to choose his staff. Even in DC, Davey Martinez, when he was a rookie manager, which is what Jace Tingler was brought in as a rookie manager, they did provide, Mike Rizzo did add some coaches, but Davey Martinez still got 2 of his own coaches. And he got more as he got this latest extension. He was able to bring in more of his guys, right? That's kind of how it works. Jace Tingler did not get a single say over his coaching staff.
Not a single say.
Yeah. And again, I mean, if that's the case, again, how much of this really is on Tingler? Again, there's going to be scapegoats in this process. Has Tingler been the greatest manager in baseball history? Of course he has not. Would the results be different with Bruce Bochy or Ron Washington? Nobody will ever know that. I would argue that they would be. I would say the first-time managers are probably in over their head when the expectations are to get to World Series, right? This was not a rebuild job like Andy Green's rebuild. When you hear something like that from Britt, though, it does create questions moving forward that whomever is the next manager, if there is a change, is anything really changing if AJ Preller is the one that's putting together the coaching staff and the scouting department and the farm directors and everything else that goes on in this organization without another general manager? It's one thing if Preller is the president of baseball operations, but if they don't bring in an outside general manager and if they don't trust the manager to make more decisions with their staff or with his staff, what ultimately is going to change in 2022?
I don't know. AJ Preller is still making all the moves. He is making all the hires. And like I said, do you really trust him with everything that's happened to make the right calls? And if he is hiring all the coaches, like you said, you're taking away all the power from Jace Tingler, whatever power you want to give to him, whatever. But still, like, if I'm the manager of the club, I want to have at least a little say in who is on my coaching staff. And from the sound of Britt Garoli there, he didn't have any say. Like that's a little, not a little, that's a lot concerning. That's very concerning to me because you're put in a position where Preller's not in that dugout. Preller's not in that clubhouse every day. And then you are expected to perform and have a winning baseball team, but you don't get any say in who is around you on the coaching staff. And how is that going to change with the next manager potentially that AJ Preller hires? Like if he goes out and hires a veteran manager, like how is that going to go over with that manager when he finds out that the entire coaching staff is built by AJ Preller?
I don't think you're going to get that veteran manager, in my opinion, then. I think that's going to be part of the next deal if they do bring a new manager in. I heard Kevin Acee say on Extra 1360 this morning that he believes that the Padres manager, Jace Tingler, right now actually has more in-game say than a number of big league managers, as in what is happening in game, when he goes to his bullpen, when he's going to pinch hitters, when he's double switching, is a lot on his staff, which isn't necessarily a good thing when you consider the way they've managed in game here in 2021. So maybe in AJ Preller's world, you get a lot of say, obviously, between the white lines during the 162 games. Outside of that, the organization is in control. Now, could that change if you bring in Ron Washington? Of course, if you bring in Bochy or Washington, Jim, I mean, of course, those managers are going to have coaches on their staff that they're familiar with. There's no way they're taking the job without having a choice of at least 2 or 3 coaches on their staff. Now, Jace Tingler wasn't in that spot. The only job he had that he was offered as a manager was in San Diego. So it was like, hey, you're the manager. We're going to direct the rest of the staff, and we're going to put you in a position where we believe you can succeed. That's not going to be the case with a veteran manager. Now, maybe a veteran manager would want the job if AJ Preller says, listen, during games, we're not giving you the directive that the Dodgers are giving you or the Giants are giving you. We're going to give you more leeway. We're also going to give you some coaches. But ultimately, the buck does stop. It starts and stops with me as well. So I don't see how that's going to work for someone like a Bruce Bochy. Could it work for a Ron Washington who hasn't managed in a while and wants that opportunity late in his career? Maybe. But you're right. There's a lot of question marks. Whoever is offered this job, assuming it comes open, or whoever takes this job, assuming it comes open, there's probably some question marks in their mind as well based on AJ Preller's track record.
Right. And the more you talk about this situation, the more you can convince yourself that maybe Tingler might stay because of those reasons. Because if you do get rid of Tingler, the expectation from everybody will be veteran manager. And the obstacles that he would face if you hire a veteran manager are exactly what you say, with giving away some control and all of that. Is AJ Preller really going to want to do that, or is he going to try to convince everybody that this was just a one-off year and Jace Tingler really is the right guy for the job, so he can maintain control of everything outside of in-game stuff and hire his own people and have a bunch of yes men behind the scenes and have a yes man for a manager like that? It's you could see where this could go, right? If he retains Jace Tingler.
The problem is, I think they now more than ever need to create that distinction, that line in the sand between front office and clubhouse. Because of everything that's happened over these last couple of months, because of the trade deadline, because of maybe the way that the front office is perceived in the clubhouse, what I would do if I was in charge, if I was Peter Seidler, or even AJ Preller, is when I brought in a new manager, and I would, if it was my decision, I would bring someone in that doesn't have direct ties to me. And now that could be a problem with a Ron Washington, although I think Washington would deserve the credibility and the trust of the clubhouse probably immediately. But that's why I would turn to a veteran that might be from the outside, that creates separation between the front office and the clubhouse. By doing that, you get the players on board. If you don't do that, you need to earn the trust of the players between now and the start of the 2022 season. I don't know if Jace Tingler is able to do that, considering how these last 2 months have played out. I really don't. And that might not be fair to Tingler. His relationship with AJ Preller isn't his fault. But the fact that he's now seen as Preller basically on the inside in the clubhouse, I think is problematic for the players on that team. And I don't think I'd want to start 2022 in that situation with so much, Jim, on the line.
Yeah, the whole thing with Jace Tingler is he's in such lockstep with AJ Preller that clubhouse views him as the front office, right? And to get that separation away from the front office is needed, it seems like, with this clubhouse, with its manager. And to do that, how hard is it going to be for AJ Preller to do that? Like, how hard is AJ Preller? How hard is it for him to get a guy with their own voice and maybe get a guy with other opinions that aren't in lockstep with his? Like, I feel like when you have people in the room who kind of push back a little bit and aren't just a bunch of yes men at times, especially in like sports, it's better for your organization instead of looking to one person and agreeing with them the entire time. Like it seems like what's going on in San Diego, where AJ Preller is making these moves in the front office. And it's been said by The Athletic to align everybody with what AJ Preller wants to do. To me, that is saying, I want a bunch of yes men.
Well, a couple of things. He made that one random hire. I want to say the offseason that he signed Eric Hosmer. Remember the Dave Cameron Fangraphs hire? Dave Cameron was really critical
Where
of
is he
Eric
at?
Hosmer. Where is he at? He's still in that front office. But you're right. I mean, there's not a lot of other moves that I can recall where AJ Preller has brought in people with dissenting voices over the last handful of years. What about this? I think you could, if you're AJ Preller, and we've said this a ton, Just go find a GM that doesn't currently work for you. That's
He's not gonna
all
do
you
that.
need to do. But you create that separation. Just go find a GM that then can, quote unquote, hire the manager. You can be involved in that conversation. It doesn't have to play out publicly. Go find a general manager from the outside that hires the next manager, and you've washed your hands of being in the clubhouse with your guy, and you can allow this thing to move forward, and you can still pull the strings behind the scenes. You just don't have to be as public facing as you are. I think it's that simple. No knock at anyone that's in the organization. It's not like, Josh Stein might be a very competent and quality baseball operations individual. He might be a great general manager in San Diego one day or elsewhere. But the appearance is going to be you're just doing the same thing and you're shuffling the deck. If you can bring in someone that's an assistant elsewhere, elevate them to the position of general manager, and allow them to have a say in the hire of the manager, the next manager, I think you put yourself in a spot where you can have some success in 2022 that might be more difficult to have if you don't do that.
Yeah, that's the easy move. That is the preferred move. That is what I'm sure everybody wants to happen. When you lose, what should you do? Get new voices in there and new ideas, and not keep having these same voices and these same ideas in the room with you at all times. But do you think he will do that? Because I don't. I don't think it is that easy for him to go outside of the organization and hire another person who has zero ties to him. He's just incapable of doing that. And that's what's so frustrating about this whole thing, is that what he is doing is not working. Plain and simple. It's not working. And it hasn't worked for 6.5 years. Last year it worked, but it was a 60-game season. This year didn't work. It's not working. So yes, the move is to go out and get a new voice and a new general manager to be under him. He can still be the president of baseball operations. You have the GM and him, collaborate on a new manager that they both like, not just a yes man that AJ Preller seemingly wants to get. But that will not happen because he's AJ Preller, and he's too stubborn to do that. He's too stubborn to go out and get new voices in the room. It's yes men or no men. That's it.
I think he does it if he's asked to do it. That's the only way he probably does it. I think that if Peter Seidler, when he takes a look at this organization from the top to the bottom, says that that's necessary for him to fulfill or to see through on his vision here in the short term and in the long term, then I think if he's forced, I don't even know if forced is the right word, but if he's asked to do it because he ultimately reports to Peter Seidler, then I could see that playing out. If Peter Seidler gives him the complete control, the complete trust to make these baseball operations decisions, then you're probably right. It's shuffling the deck, which is something they've started to do already. Obviously, they've made moves over the last 4 or 5 weeks that started with Larry Rothschild. You're right. I think unless he's put in a corner where he has to do it, it probably doesn't happen. Now, does he think he is in that corner to start 2022 or not? Maybe he thinks he can play this out for another 1 year. I think the problem with that is a year from now, I don't think he's going to have any leash. I don't know if he's going to have his job. I think a year from now, if you're in the exact same spot, you're 25 games out of first place and 10 games out of a playoff spot, I wonder if you're going to have a new president of baseball operations at that point.
Maybe. And we have to wait to hear from Peter Seidler. Like, he's the one guy that, yes, everyone wants to hear from AJ Preller, but I want to hear from Peter Seidler. Like, when this season ends, whenever they have their end of the year press conference, Peter Seidler is the one guy that I want to listen to, because it's going to tell me a lot about where this organization will be going in the future with AJ Preller or without him. If he gives a full 100% vote of confidence to AJ Preller, he's not going anywhere. And he's done that in the past, by the way. Like, Peter Seidler has said he has 100% faith and trust in AJ Preller. All of a sudden, it's just going to flip. Something needs to happen, and maybe it's this losing season, maybe it's this collapse that makes it happen. But until I hear it from Peter Seidler's own mouth, I know that he 100% trusts AJ Preller in whatever he does.
All right. Do you trust AJ Preller to make the right moves going forward? Leave your comments below. We can react to those on YouTube. Again, If you have not subscribed to the Wrap-Up Show on YouTube, we have year-round exclusive content. Hit that subscribe button below. Hit the subscribe button below. If you like this video, give us a thumbs up as well. If you're on Twitter, follow us there at John Schaefer, at Jim Russell SD. I have a feeling we'll have some more moving and shaking in the Padres organization over parts of the next week. So we'll catch up again soon. This has been the Wrap-Up Show.